Now, these wise men here, they raise some questions for us. First of all, who were they? And secondly, how did they know about the King of the Jews? Who were they? Well, we don't know for sure who they were. They just kind of show up here out of nowhere. The phrase wise men is a translation of a Greek word from which we get the name magi. Maybe you've heard that term before, the magi. Now, the Christmas carol says there were 3 of them because they present 3 gifts to Jesus. But the text doesn't say there were only 3 wise men. There were likely a lot more than 3 wise men. There may have been hundreds of men in this entourage from the east. And so, this is like an army rolling into the capital city of Jerusalem looking for the legitimate king of the Jews. No wonder the whole city is troubled by their arrival. And these wise men are from the east. They're from Mesopotamia. They're from the area of the old Babylonian Empire. The Babylonians, the Bible tells us, the Babylonians had wise men. They had magi. And the magi continued, even after the Babylonian Empire passed off the scene, they continued into the Medo-Persian Empire and onward, even until the time of Jesus Christ. So the wise men originated in Babylon. How do they know about the King of the Jews? In the book of Daniel, right? Daniel the prophet was a captive living in the Babylonian Empire during the Babylonian captivity. And Daniel chapter 2, verse 48, if you're taking notes, Daniel chapter 2, verse 48 tells us that Daniel was made the chief administrator over the wise men of Babylon. Daniel the prophet was put in charge of the Magi and Babylon. And it seems, we can't say for sure, but it seems that Daniel, being in charge of the Magi in Babylon, he taught the Magi about the coming King of the Jews. He shared the scriptures with them and the prophecies about the King of the Jews. Plus, remember that Daniel received the most remarkable prophecy of all about the coming Messiah and King of the Jews. In Daniel chapter 9, verse 25, we're given the exact year the Messiah would come. Exactly 483 years after the decree to rebuild and restore Jerusalem. And so they knew. They knew the year the Messiah would come. And we studied the book of Daniel on Thursday night. You can listen to the recordings of it on our website. And I want to encourage you to come out on Thursday night because so much of what we're studying in the Old Testament ties into what we're studying in the New Testament. Now, one thing is for sure, these wise men were watching for the Messiah to come at a time when very few people were watching for the Messiah. These men were watching for the Messiah. The religious leaders weren't watching for the Messiah to come. The Messiah was born and living in Bethlehem, and the religious people were clueless. They had no idea. Religious people quite often are clueless when it comes to Jesus. But these wise men were carefully watching and waiting for the King of the Jews, and they were ready when he came to seek him and worship him. The Bible says we should be watching for Jesus Christ to come again for his church. And we should be looking up because our redemption is drawing near. We should be soberly watching and ready to go. Jesus said, "Watch therefore, for you do not know what hour your Lord is coming." He says in Luke 12, "Let your waist be girded and your lamps burning, and you yourselves be like men who wait for their master when he will return from the wedding, that when he comes and knocks, they may open to him immediately. Blessed are those servants whom the master, when he comes, will find watching. We're to be watching. We're to be looking for Jesus to come, to take us to heaven. Blessed are those servants whom the master, when he comes, finds watching. You know, the wise men, they have the scriptures that tell them the Messiah will come and when he will come, and they're watching and waiting for him based on what they read in the Word. You and I, based on what we read in the Word, we're watching and waiting for Jesus Christ to come. In verse 2, the wise men tell Herod, they saw his star in the east, or from the east, and they followed his star to Judea. Now, this star is pretty interesting here. I don't believe it's a literal star because it doesn't do what stars do. What do I mean by that? Well, first of all, it moved from east to west, and then it seems to have disappeared once they got to Jerusalem. Then it reappears, and it guides them from Jerusalem to Bethlehem, which is south. And so it changes directions. It goes from east to west, and then from north to south. And then it just stops and hovers over one particular house in Bethlehem. So it doesn't behave like a star. Neither was it a conglomeration of planets, as some say it is, and neither was it a comet. It's just not acting like that. So I don't think that's what it is. I believe it was the Shekinah glory of God. You know, the Shekinah glory of God was used at the announcement of the birth of Jesus to the shepherds in Luke's gospel. I believe this is the Shekinah glory of God. It looks like a star. It's leading the wise men to Jesus. Now, if you're taking notes, there's a messianic prophecy in Numbers chapter 24, verse 17. And I'll read it to you. Numbers 24, 17, where it says, speaking of the Messiah, I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star shall come out of Jacob. A scepter shall rise out of Israel. In Numbers 24:17, the Messiah is described as a star rising out of Jacob. And because of this prophecy in Numbers 24:17, a star became a symbol or an emblem of the Messiah. In Israel, you see stars in the architecture of ancient synagogues, for example, because of this prophecy about the Messiah. I have a picture for you just to show you here. This is from Capernaum. This is part of the ruins of the synagogue in Capernaum. And you can see the stars there in the architecture. It's a symbol of the Messiah, the star that will rise out of Jacob. It's a symbol of the messianic hope of Israel. Think about the flag of Israel. The flag of Israel has two blue stripes, or it's bordered. It's white with a blue border. The flag is to look like a Jewish prayer shawl, and in the middle of it, there's a star, the Star of David, the Shield of David. That star represents the messianic hope of Israel, their hope in their Messiah.